In today's video, we're going to be going through the new motor for the truck right here. So that means fresh new gaskets, new oil pump, pretty much new everything. I'll show you guys right now the parts list that we have. It's pretty big, but we're going to be going through the motor and getting it ready to throw into the truck. If you guys haven't seen the last couple of videos, we shaved the engine bay on the truck, made some custom hard lines for the brakes, so those are all tucked, along with the master cylinder clutch line, and we also painted the engine bay. So if you guys are interested in checking any of that out, I will have the playlist down in the description below in case you guys are interested. Right over here on the bench, we have a couple of goodies. So I ended up getting a front cover polished for this truck. So obviously you can see there's a little bit of dust on it since it's been sitting, but this should complement the front of the engine pretty nice. I also got the intake manifold all stripped down from all of the emissions equipment, and I also sent this off to get it polished. So obviously there's like I said, a couple of handprints on there, so it's not the cleanest right now, but it's all polished and ready to go. And on top of all this polishing, I also sent off the valve cover to get it chromed. You can see now we have a very, very nice finish. Once again, it is super dirty, so you see all those marks on there, but if I were to clean them off, you can see that they're just on there. So we will be doing a video install with those header I should say, and the Weber 38 carb on this bad boy. Now my goal for this motor is to be super reliable. I don't want any crazy power out of it. I'm not supercharging, I'm not turbocharging it. I don't want any crazy power. I just simply want to throw a nice carburetor on there and a nice set of headers. That way I can get a little bit more power out of it since they are extremely slow. Starting off over here, we have two new sets of spark plugs since it takes two, one for the intake, one for the exhaust side. We also got our thermostat, brand new thermostat. We also got a cap for the distributor. We have a brand new timing chain tensioner, which is a very key component. We have a new belt. Now this motor is only going to have one belt since I don't have power steering, AC, none of that. I'm just keeping it super old school and basic. I might add it on in the future, but for now I just want it to look as clean and simple as possible. We also have an oil pump over here. We have a brand new clutch slave. The truck has a brand new master, so we got a bunch of goodies. We got the distributor cap over there, so we got a brand new cap and rotor. We also got a gasket kit, which came from every single gasket from the oil pan down at the bottom all the way up to the valve cover at the top end. So we got rear main seal, front main seal, exhaust, we got the half moons, we got the brand new head gasket. We got every gasket you can think of in this kit. We also got a set of new NGK spark plug wires. I opted to go with the blue ones just because I thought it would look a little better since it was pretty much the same price. In this big box we have a water pump assembly. So if you guys don't know, these water pumps on these motors, it's the water pump and it's also connected with the clutch that goes on the clutch fan. So it's all one assembly. So we got that brand new in the big box. And then over here, this is not for the engine, this is more for the truck. It is a drive shaft carry bearing. So I figured I'd pick one up since the one in the truck is going out, and you know, it's one of those things that it doesn't hurt to replace with a brand new one. I think I've already talked a lot. I think it's time to get started on disassembling this and assembling the new parts on. I got the front lower cover off now, so I'm going to be removing the tensioner and replacing this. Now I'm pretty sure this one is good, but it doesn't hurt to replace while I'm in here. I'm going to do it. Right now I'm just hitting the back of the front cover with a wire wheel on a drill just to get any of the old gasket off. You can see it right there. I tried using a razor blade to get a majority of it off, but there's a couple stubborn pieces like that don't want to come off. So I want to make sure that everything is flat. That way I don't have any oil leaks at all. I'm going to be reusing the old, I guess you can call this the oil pump shaft or the distributor shaft, but the shaft that goes on the inside that connects the oil pump with the distributor. So this gear right here goes on a little gear that's inside. So this is what spins it, and it spins the distributor and the oil pump. So this right here, I'm going to be using some assembly lube from when I built my motor. You always want to make sure that you lube up parts that are metal to metal. You can see right there, it has made some scoring marks on there from the past, but it shouldn't really matter as long as I lube it up with some assembly lube. Put some on there, put some on here, and then we're going to also be putting some grease, a thin layer of grease on this gear. That way there is no metal to metal contact. Also, one quick thing that I'm going to be doing is this is the new oil pump. Like I said, I'm going to be filling it up with oil and spinning it very slowly in order to get it to prime with oil. Make sure you got a fresh new gasket. Don't want to reuse any gaskets. Now the way you're going to align your spindle shaft with your oil pump is going to be with this little indentation that it has. So you see there's no other indentation anywhere except for that one. So that one is going to line up with this one right here. You can see right there. You can see that on this side there is a smaller half moon versus on this side there's a bigger half moon. So this is going to go into your distributor, which is over here. So if you look at it, there's a big half moon and there's a small half moon. It's hard to see. There you go. So you're going to want to line those up. Now right now it's not that important because you can still rotate this and it'll be perfectly fine. But you want to make sure to keep it like that for when you put it into the motor because it's going to determine your distributor timing on the other side. Now I'm going to be installing the oil pump, but in order to install the oil pump, you need to always make sure that it's at top dead center. So the way you can tell for this motor to be at top dead center is you could stick a zip tie or a screwdriver or something inside the spark plug hole and then turn the motor, and then obviously when it pushes it all the way out, you know you're at top dead center. But another way to tell is on the pulley there is a tiny little mark. I try to put pink paint on it since I had some laying around. Right there's a little like notch on the main crankshaft pulley, and the timing marks actually go on to the front cover with this little piece right here. So you can see I have it at 0 degrees right now, meaning it's at top dead center. There you go. But like I said, there's 2 top dead centers, so you could put it to 0 right here, but at the top it's going to be on the intake stroke. Another way to figure that out is if you look at the cam sprocket, there is 3 notches or 3 little half moons. There's 1, 2, 3, and there's not one in the bottom. If this one right here is on the bottom and there's no notch up here, then you have it 180 degrees out. The only way to fix that, is you turn your crank, turn it all the way until this comes back to 0, and then if you look, you should be back to on the left, on the top, and on the right. Now when you install the oil pump, you want to make sure that you're not moving it around too much and that the shaft doesn't move around on you and it stays aligned with the oil pump. Now once you got that in there and it's all aligned, didn't move on you, then you can come over here and check. And the way to check is if you look at, so I'm trying to get a light on there. If you check, like I described, there's a small half moon on the left, and on the right it's the big half moon. Here you can see this is looking straight at it. So 12 o'clock would be, I guess let's just call this line right here in the head 12 o'clock. If you look, it's slightly off 12 o'clock, which is what you want. You want it to be kind of like an 11:30, I guess you can call it. So slightly pointing to the front. You also don't want it to be aligned with these because then it would be too far over. You want it just right there. Once you get that, then you can go ahead and slide your distributor in. Right here, we have a new cap and we have a new rotor. So now we're going to be replacing this one. It's not in bad shape, but figured I'd replace it and throw a new one on there just for safety measures. Same thing with the cap. This one looks a little bit more worn out, as you can see. A new one won't hurt, and I'll keep these as backups in case these ever fail. Now that you put your distributor in, it only goes one way, like I said, because of the half moon. So you got to line up the small half moon with the big half moon. Once you get that in, you should be in here somewhere. Whether it's like this or like this, but it has to be somewhere in here, or it should be at least. Now, if yours aren't lined up with these bolt holes and you're way off completely somewhere out of the map, then you got to go back and check what you did wrong. But if you're good like this and you're somewhere in here like this, then you should be good. Now what you want to do is you have two. You have this inner one, which is for the exhaust, and you have the outer one, which is for the intake. So you want your intake to be pointing on your number one intake. Now that you got them in there, obviously you can see I didn't thread them in, but you know that they're aligned. Then you go over here and you try to find your, it's very hard to see, your intake one, which is the outer one. So the outer ones are the intake and the inner ones are the exhaust. So your intake one, memorize where it's at. So if we go down here, we're going to see that it's at the edge of this groove. Once we have this tightened down, let's say it's tightened down, it's at the edge of this groove. So you pop this back off, put it aside. Now we find that groove that we memorized, which is right here. And this is the center of your rotor for the intake side. So if you look at it right now, it's not aligned. It's somewhere out here. So the way to align this is you want to turn your distributor until it lines up, which would be right there. Like I said, back to where we had remembered that little piece. Want to center it with this, and there you go. So that would be your way of timing this. This is just a very rough start. Obviously, once you get this in the truck or whatever you do, you have to start it up, get it warmed, and once your motor is warmed, then you come back and adjust it with a timing light. But this is just a very rough idea of how to set your timing from the get-go. So obviously, once it's like this, then you tighten everything down, put your bolts in here, and there you go. And in order to advance it, you would have to turn it counterclockwise, and to retard it, you would have to turn it clockwise. Now, I'm going to be installing the water pump. I got a brand new water pump in here. Got a new water pump and a new clutch assembly. So it's all one unit, and it comes with a new bolt for anyone wondering. I know when I removed mine, I was like, how am I going to get the bolts in when there is a clutch in front of it and it's all one assembly? But yeah, apparently it comes with a new bolt. So I know that's a confusing part on these for a lot of people. For the exhaust side, I'm going to be running these. These are NGKs. There you go, in case you guys want to go and buy these. So this is for the exhaust side, and for the intake side, I'm going to be running these. For those of you who don't know the difference, these burn colder. Before I throw them in, I'm going to be putting a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Now I'm going to be installing the thermostat, so I ended up upgrading the thermostat. So I got a 160 degree thermostat when the factory one is 180 degree thermostat. So what that means is when it gets to 160 degrees, the thermostat's going to open and allow the fluid, the coolant, to go to the radiator sooner than if I had a 180 degree one, which would obviously have to get to 180 degrees before it allows coolant to go through into the radiator. So it's not really going to give me any performance benefits, just besides the fact that it's going to open sooner, which in theory is going to keep it a little cooler. So I personally like to get them, them to open up as early as possible. Obviously, you don't want them to be, open too soon. I know some people remove the thermostat completely, which is not also good because your engine is designed to run at a certain operating temperature. And if you take it out, then it never pretty much warms up the water since it's always cycling and always getting cooled. So your water is going to be at like 80 degrees, which is not really what you want. If you see, it's got this little valve on the top, so, or bottom, whatever way you want to call it, but this is supposed to go on the top. It's to allow it to bleed a little bit easier. That way you get all the air out, and obviously the air rises to the top, so always want to make sure that you put this to the top, and then this is the way it goes. So the spring goes in towards the motor, and then this side goes out. I just got back from the store. I went to go pick up some stainless hardware. So these should look a lot better. And in my opinion, it's a little stuff like this that makes a big difference in a build. And each one of these is like 50 cents. And there's 8 of them on the valve cover. So I'll quickly show you guys a difference to see if you guys can, spot a difference. So this right here is the old one. You can see it's just a Phillips head. It's all nasty and gunky. Obviously this is just exactly how I took it off. Now we're going to be replacing this with this. Big difference, right? Now this washer is the factory one. I just cleaned it up pretty good. I could still clean it up a little more. You can see there's a tiny bit of rust on there. So I'm still going to clean it some more. But I just wanted to show you guys a little difference from this to this. I pulled out the studs that were in here. So for those of you who don't know what this is where the Egr valve goes. For those of you who don't know what the Egr valve, it's a little valve on the back of the intake manifold, which pretty much recirculates some of the exhaust gases back into the intake to help warm it up and to help with emissions. I just made a little block-off plate with some aluminum that I had laying around. I'm going to be reusing the gasket, and I got some new hardware to throw in there. So there should be 2 long studs sticking out. Got rid of those, made a little block-off plate. And to seal this up, I like to use RTV just because I feel like it seals a lot better. Now, I've always done it like this, and even with a little thin piece of aluminum, since it's such a small area, it tightens up pretty good. If you guys have studs like this that you want to remove that are just there for no reason, this motor did have power steering, so that's why this is here, because this is where the bracket goes for the little reservoir. But since I'm not going to be running power steering, I want to get rid of this just because personally, I think little stuff like this looks dumb when there's just a random stud sticking out. It's super simple. I just have 2 random nuts right here that don't really belong to anything. And we're just going to thread them on. Now that we have our nut, our first one on there, now we're going to put our second one. And what we want to do with the 2 nuts is essentially butt them up together, that way they don't move. And then once they're together, then you get your wrench, go on the inner one. This is also the same way you can put studs in, same method, but you can see once we turn this,